Hello and welcome to this lecture on alcohol use during adulthood. How is alcohol produced? All right, so we're going to start with the idea about how we actually make alcohol. So this all starts with some sort of starter carbohydrate, a carb that we need. So for wine, this will be grapes or other fruits. For beer, it'll be some sort of malted cereal grain. And for spirits, it can be various fruits. It can be vegetables, grains. For example, with bourbon, it's corn. We take that and we get maltose, which is diglucose, and then from there we break that down to glucose. Glucose is our sugar. Now the question is if we're going to do anaerobic or aerobic respiration. For aerobic respiration, that means oxygen is available. For anaerobic respiration, that means oxygen is no longer available. If we don't let oxygen be available, if we make it an anaerobic process, it will make for us ethanol. That is the potent potable, the thing we like to drink. However, if instead oxygen gets into that mix, instead of making ethanol for you, it will make vinegar. This is why sometimes when people try to make wine, instead of making wine, they make vinegar, or if you leave wine open for a long period of time, it might taste vinegary, and it's because an aerobic respiration begins and it's breaking down some residual glucose and converting it into vinegar instead. How do we make beer and how do we ferment it then? Okay, so there's two main types. I'm sure you've heard a lot of different categories of different types of beer, and we'll talk about those in a few minutes. But really the main difference is if it's a top fermenting or a bottom fermenting type of alcoholic beverage. For top fermenters, we call those ale. In both cases, you're going to use a type of yeast called Saccharomyces. For the type of ale, it's typically Saccharomyces cerevisiae, and for lagers, it's Saccharomyces uvarum. Now, the difference also is between ales and lagers, and why we sometimes say some beers have to stay cold, is ales are warm fermenters. They're usually fermented around 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. The yeast is floating on the top, and that'll make for us products like ales, porters, stouts, IPAs, all those. So that's why also when you buy those in the store, they're usually out at room temperature. There's no problem with that. You keep them there for long periods of time, cool it down, warm it back up. It's not going to do anything to the ale. On the flip side, a lager is brewed cold. Usually the temperature for a lager is around 45 degrees to 55 degrees. So sometimes you hear people talking about, oh, it's brewed cold and kept cold all the time. That's important for lagers. Lagers don't like to be warmed up very much, and it's because they're also unconditioned. They don't have that residual yeast usually left inside of the beer itself. So with those, for the lagers, we're going to have things like lagers, pilsners, etc. So this slide for you here in this picture breaks down for you the difference between lagers and ales. On the left, we can see those bottom fermenters lagers. This is where you're going to get things like American lagers like Budweiser, PBR Coors, pilsners like Beck's, Dunkels like Harpoon, or a Bock like Shiner. And on the right-hand side, we see those top fermenters, the warm fermenters, your pale ales like your Sierra Nevadas, your Anchor Steam, barley wines like Sierra Nevada makes or Dogfish Head, stouts and porters. It's really the same thing. You might find like Guinness in this category, or some Sierra Nevadas or Great Lakes Founders makes a really good porter, in fact. And you even have Lambic in this category also for your top fermenters. Keep in mind, alcoholic products themselves can be local, craft, or industrial. So for example, should be viewing our alcoholic beverages the same as other consumer products when you think about, you can think about organic or local or craft. Yuengling, it's the oldest brewery in America. It was family owned, brewed in Pennsylvania. It's still there today. Captain Lawrence Brewing Company right here in Westchester County. Doc's Draft Hard Cider. It's up in Warwick, New York. Flip that with Budweiser, for example, which is Anheuser-Busch InBev. If we look at Budweiser itself, that's what these two companies are. On the left-hand side, you can see the image. That's AB InBev. So when you buy Budweiser, that's the same company that owns Busch. It's the same company that owns Elysian in California. It's the same company that owns Jupiler. It's the same company that owns Natty Light, Labatt Blue. Look at all these brands. It's all the same company when it breaks down to it because the parent owner is, in this case, AB InBev. For SAB Miller, it's the same situation. Look over there. You can see Miller on that side. Pilsner Urquell, Key House, Foster's. It's all the same brand. It's just they label themselves differently so it appears differently. So why does this matter? It's much like going to a farmer's market. When you go to a farmer's market, you can talk to the farmer. You know what and you can do that with a brewer as well. You know what they put in there. You know how they did it. So then you can make a better decision as a consumer what you want to be exposed to, what you want to drink that day. Also, when you buy local, you can use growlers, which is basically a piece of glass you can bring in like a glass jar. And that's going to reduce your overall carbon footprint of the product. It also doesn't have to go as far away. So obviously it's not driving, across the country or across the world to get to you. And also obviously it has that impact on water distribution. If you're, consuming alcohol or beer from a local brewer, that water is from your water supply. So therefore you're not changing water tables in other areas. Keep in mind, cider is a really, really big product as well when we think about America. Cider was the original staple beverage we had before beer. So beer was brought into the Americas, or at least the United States, in the 1800s when there was a lot of German immigrants that came to the country, and that's a good thing. But prior to that, we had lots of apple orchards, and so apple cider, fermented cider, is really an American drink. It's something about heritage. It was a staple in American homes, and that's why you're seeing a lot more of it nowadays too, because they're trying to bring that back. So also understanding the cultural significance of the things you drink is important. So that's it. Just a little quick video for you on how alcohol is produced, different types of it, and I hope you found this interesting.